Welcome to Soccer Morning on World Soccer Talk. Here's your host, Jason Davis.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Welcome into Soccer Morning, brought to you by World Soccer Talk here on the first day of April 2015. Finally feeling like spring in my particular area. I'm very excited for that. I am so tired of cold and snow and cold rain, and I'm sure it's going to rain. But right now it's not. It's not particularly warm, but the sun is shining. I get to walk around a little bit, enjoy the day. It's spring break, so I'm also responsible for entertaining a 6-year-old, which is always just a blast. Really. You figure I can set him up with this thing and do some work. No, it doesn't work that way. Every 5 seconds. Got to be entertained. We have a big show for you today. Leander Schaerlaeckens will join us to break down the U.S. men's national team draw against Switzerland yesterday. Should be a good discussion with Leander. Perhaps we'll touch on his beloved Dutch as they beat Spain 2-0 in a friendly. And then Manuel Veth from Football Grad. Did I get that right? Let me say footballgrad.com. Will join us to talk a little bit about some crowd issues, some fan issues in Montenegro. With the Russians last week, get the timing right on that. Georgia has been charged by UEFA for some fans on the field. It's not going to be all bad with Manuel. We'll try to dive into some good stuff as well. Ukraine continues to be a good story, at least in terms of the international game. Nearly knocked off Spain, or nearly pulled a draw out of that game against Spain. We'll talk 2018 Russian World Cup as well, because that'll be an evolving story. We're only 3 years out, and Russia's got to get ready. The rest of the world has to get on board with a Russian World Cup. We'll see how that's going with Manuel Veth. Should be a good discussion with him as well. Let's go ahead and jump into the headlines before we talk to Leander. As I mentioned, the United States improved over their last match against Denmark with a 1-1 draw against Switzerland. Breck Shea with an excellent free kick just before halftime to give the United States a lead. Everything a bit sullied by the fact that Josie Altidore was shown a red card for, first of all, a bad tackle. And if you watch that sequence, Josie was upset he didn't get a call. You saw him chasing down the ball, intent on getting the ball back and or making a rash tackle, which he did. Yellow card for that. Then he goes ahead and tells the referee to F off. Or he said F you, whichever one, doesn't matter. He said F something and was promptly shown a red card, sent off. The United States down to 10 men, tried to hold on, could not quite do so. But again, it's an improved performance. How much we give credit to Jurgen Klinsmann for the improved performance, considering how low the bar was, is an open question. We'll get to that with Leander Schaerlaeckens. This in the news, the New York Yankees have told NYCFC and MLS they can't guarantee the stadium availability for Yankee Stadium after September due to field conditions, due to fan behavior. They've instructed NYCFC to look for a new 2016 home. And in the meantime, New York City FC is in discussions with the New York Red Bulls to share a stadium in Harrison, New Jersey. In friendlies, international friendlies, Mexico has backed up their win. Backed up their win. Who did they beat last week, Trevor? This just went out right out of my head. Ecuador, Saturday. They beat Ecuador on Saturday. They beat Paraguay last night. I watched some of that game. Eduardo Herrera scored his first Mexican national team goal to lift El Tri over Paraguay. 1-0. There wasn't really a whole lot in that game. It wasn't a classic Mexican performance. Paraguay kicked the Mexicans around a bit. Mexico created a couple of decent chances, but I didn't see a whole lot that gives you the thought that Mexico is going to steamroll into the Gold Cup. And remember, Miguel Herrera has to balance out the Gold Cup, which is the priority because they want that Confederations Cup ticket, with the Copa America tournament as well this summer. In an actual meaningful match, Belgium beat Israel 1-0. Vincent Kompany sent off in that game, but the Belgians hold on. Not their best performance, not Kompany's best performance. People talking about Vincent Kompany and his downward trajectory, something to watch, certainly from a Manchester City perspective as well as a Belgium perspective. Remember, this is the golden generation. This is a team that's supposed to win some things. They don't seem to be on that track, but they do have tons of talent. Every now and then you see a little bump in the road with the Belgians. Lots and lots of talent. Can they go into Euro 2016 next year in France and actually do something? Remains to be seen. Mentioned the Dutch beating Spain 2-0, a disappointing performance for Spain. So this is how the pendulum swings. One moment, Guus Hiddink is under pressure with the Dutch and could potentially lose his job because they're not playing well. Then the Dutch beat Spain, who put in a rather toothless performance, and now there's questions over whether or not Spain's going to be able to get it together ahead of Euro 2016 next summer. Not that anybody thinks that Bosca is going anywhere, but Spain obviously has a couple of issues to sort out themselves. Best teams in the world can sometimes go through some of these stretches. Borussia Dortmund defender Mats Hummels says he never made a pledge to Manchester United to join that club at some point in the future. I love this story. It's not much of a story, and I admit it, and I included it in the news to round things out today. But the story is that Mats Hummels wants to stay at Dortmund, or says that this is a fib or a lie or a fabrication, putting it mildly, that he told Sir Alex Ferguson in 2012 that he would join Manchester United at some point. Now, again, that's 3 years ago. So at what point was he supposed to be joining Manchester United? When was this promise supposed to come to fruition? If there's no date on it, there's no deadline on it, what is it? Who cares? Mats Hummels said that one day he'll play for Manchester United. He could just keep putting that off. As long as he never said when, he can just keep putting that off. And of course, Borussia Dortmund want to hold on to him. Here's the quote. He said that to make one thing clear, the alleged promise is a complete fabrication, and that's putting it mildly. And this is from Bild, who reported this on Tuesday, that in 2012, the center back made a promise to then United manager Sir Alex Ferguson that if he were to make a move abroad, he would only sign at Old Trafford. Okay, so there's a little bit of specificity. Terrible. A little bit of specificity on that. And of course, as I said, Dortmund wants to keep him. Dortmund have said they are completely relaxed about Hummels' future. And Hans-Joachim Watzke told Sky that the German international says he feels great here. So there you go. Not much of a story. I'm just sort of fascinated by these he said little situations. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we will grab our friend Leander Schaerlaeckens, soccer writer extraordinaire, to break down the United States draw with Switzerland. Perhaps we'll range a field with him as well. Don't go anywhere. Soccer Morning, brought to you by WorldSoccerTalk.com.
Talking too loud.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on World Soccer Talk with Jason Davis.
Here we go, back on Soccer Morning, chatting with Leander Schaerlaeckens, soccer writer extraordinaire. Leander Alphabet on Twitter. Leander, how are you?
I'm well, Jason. How are you?
I am well. I'm a little heartened by that performance that the Americans put in Zurich against Switzerland yesterday. Not because I think it shows, oh, look, they're going to be fine. The Gold Cup, the challenge for the Gold Cup is going to be strong. Just because it was some improvement over that Denmark game. Am I underselling it? Am I overselling it? Where am I on this?
I think you're about right. I think we've gotten to a point now where we had such a lackluster string of results, going back really to the World Cup, that any game where we're sort of seeing a little bit of cohesion, where a little bit of incisiveness is a win, even if it wasn't a win, of course. It was. I pointed out on Twitter and in my Yahoo column, it was the 14th goal the U.S. has conceded in the 80th minute or later in their last 15 games, spanning all the way back to sort of the send-off series before the World Cup. And that's deeply concerning. But just the fact that they sort of looked cohesive and that, for the most part, they were savvy and they were absorbing pressure and then kind of breaking away, I thought was encouraging. And maybe it's kind of telling that we're grappling for this sort of silver lining here now. I actually thought it was pretty interesting. The MLS website, MLSsoccer.com, said this was maybe one of the best performances under Jurgen Klinsmann. And that leads me to ask, is that really good enough?
Yeah, I saw Matt Doyle was pretty effusive with I don't want to say praise, but with his encouraging words about this performance. Now, I did see the same things. I saw absorbing pressure fairly well. I saw getting out of trouble fairly well. I saw using the flanks to a certain extent, maybe to relieve the pressure, not necessarily to an attacking benefit. Timmy Chandler had a rough day, at least in the final third. But there is the issue of, controlling the ball, controlling the game. And I don't expect the United States to go on the road in Europe and control a game, Leander, but I expect them to do a little bit better with the ball at their feet than they did yesterday. That's how low the bar is now, right? When it's at one point, I think they were talking about 35% possession in that game. That's not good.
No, and that's just the thing of it, Jason. I mean, the whole point of the Klinsmann tenure was to lift this team to a higher level, and the higher level was defined as proactive soccer, that old Klinsmann buzzword. Possession, high pressure, taking it to other teams. And really what they were successful with yesterday is going back to those old staples that had kind of gone AWOL under Klinsmann of sound organization, sort of a sturdy defense. Well, maybe not even that yesterday, but a team that's cohesive and a team that's working and toiling and laboring together in tight little units. That understands how to break on the counter, in a way that's swift and smart, that's absorbing and then breaking away. I mean, it looked a lot like a U.S. team circa, 2009, 2010 under Bob Bradley. Only I don't know that yesterday they were as good as they would have been back then. Maybe that's not entirely fair because his team is between cycles, but these are the things that we're sort of reaching for now.
I'm looking at the stats. According to the MLS website, 37% possession for the United States yesterday. Passing accuracy of 74% with 200 less passes, 200 fewer passes than Switzerland overall in the game. Again, it's almost like I understand what Klinsmann's, his words and the disconnect between his words and how this team plays are the biggest factor for me. But it almost feels like we're trying to get back to a Bob Bradley level, and I don't remember being super enthused about the way they played back then, even when they were somewhat successful with it.
Yeah, I mean, Bob Bradley's tenure, the way I remember it, is it was, the soccer wasn't always sparkling, but his teams were solid, and they never really, had a game where you had a whole raft of players put in a terrible performance. I mean, it was always decent, and they scored a lot of goals in qualifying, and it was always sort of structurally sound. And that's just not true under Klinsmann. And we have seen the occasional flash of what Klinsmann had been preaching about. I seem to recall the Jamaica game in Columbus in 2013, a World Cup qualifier. For the first half, they were dazzling. But those episodes have been so few and far between, and the rest of the time it's often just been disjointed and just kind of scattershot, and they're giving up all these late goals. They're giving away results. We've seen all this turnover of players coming through again and again. I wrote this in my Yahoo column, I think it was last week. Klinsmann has used 55 players since the World Cup. And now you can say it's a rebuilding time, it's after a cycle, but of the teams that reached the round of 16 that didn't change managers, that's the most, by a pretty good margin. So he's going through all these players, and he never seems to be able to settle on who it is he wants to play with, even though he's seen an awful lot of guys by now. And I think that's what led Jesse Marsch, the New York Red Bulls coach, who of course was Bob Bradley's assistant, to say that the team doesn't have an identity, because his argument was even when you're cycling through players, you should still have something of a house style, something of a system that everything sort of revolves around. And the house style that Jurgen talked about for years and hasn't much lately, I still don't see.
How much of that is on the fact that Michael Bradley is not entrenched in a position that he can make his own? I mean, he's a 10 in the World Cup. He's something of an 8.5. He's never a 6 anymore, but I'm not sure that's the best use of his talent. It's almost like, and I've even seen it argued that maybe it's not necessarily on Klinsmann that Bradley is sort of a tweener in the midfield, but how much of it is the fact that your best player isn't really able to put forth his best effort because of that indecisiveness on position?
Well, I don't personally think Bradley's a tweener, first of all. I think he's an 8.
Okay.
I think he's a guy who's a really good distributor. He's not a 10. He doesn't play that high up the field, but he's at his best, I think, when he can sort of shuttle between the boxes, make those late runs, and distribute from deep. There's schools of thought between coaches, and some say that you fit your players to your system, and others say that you fit your system to your players. And I think that Jurgen kind of vacillates between the two, and he doesn't have a 10. The U.S. has never really had a 10, but he kind of insists on wedging Bradley into that hole. I think you have to probably fault Jurgen for that, and you see that a lot. I've been covering this team for a pretty long time now. And most games ahead of time, I still have no idea what I'm going to see. I don't know what the formation's going to be. I don't know what the tactics are going to be. I don't know who's going to go where. It's just become completely unpredictable. And while that has its merits when you're, trying to surprise opponents, I think in this case there's just so much of that turnover and unpredictability that it kind of backfires on the team itself.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's the biggest, the most obvious criticism that you can throw at Klinsmann without getting into his selections, his actual formations, and maybe even some of these elements that are. It's interesting whether or not we put the collapse issue on Jurgen Klinsmann. Leander, is that his fault that they're giving up so many late goals? I mean, in friendlies, you do have to factor in how many substitutions are being made, but even when there's a couple of changes, you would expect them to be able to sort of lock in, especially if they have a lead, and be able to protect that.
Well, the friendly argument for me is a little bit of a red herring, because whenever the U.S., they beat Mexico in a friendly, they beat Italy in a friendly, they beat Bosnia in a friendly, and we're shouting it from the rooftops. But then when there are bad results in friendlies, it's, they're only friendlies. I think when the players are so seldom the same and the problem is consistent, then you do have to look at the coach. And I mean, he points to fitness and all of that. And he has used some young players who might have mental lapses late on in the game. But when it's this consistent for this long, you do have to wonder what the issue is here and what the larger structural problem is.
In terms of individual performances yesterday, anything stand out for you? I mean, Josie Altidore obviously sent off. That kind of ruins his day. I think he does what Klinsmann wants him to do for the most part. We obviously had Gyasi Zardes up at forward. I'm not sure he was overly effective. Alejandro Bedoya was everybody's pick for man of the match. Is that what you saw as well?
Yeah, I really like Bedoya out on the wing. I think in a 4-4-2, that's a really good spot for him because the U.S. just needs someone who can create something. And it's maybe that's more direct soccer than Klinsmann and maybe a lot of the fans would like to see, but it was effective. I mean, he created chances. I quite liked Breck Shea at left back. I thought against a pretty strong opposition, he held his own. He wasn't, tested on every single play, but I think he looked solid back there. And what's encouraging for me there is that the U.S. now has 3 viable options at left back. Shea, Fabian Johnson, and Greg Garza, who's been really good since the World Cup. So that is I don't remember the U.S. ever having 3 viable options at left back.
Yes.
So that's encouraging. I thought Danny Williams looked pretty good. He sort of played that Kyle Beckerman role of playing a 6 and just kind of shielding the defense and helping with the start of the build-up play. I thought he was good there. And I think you have to consider that Beckerman, I believe, is going to be 33 pretty soon, and Williams is only 26. So it's encouraging that they have a guy who can play in that role.
Absolutely. The left back thing is kind of mind-boggling considering the long history of the United States being unable to develop a decent left back. When it comes to right back, there might be a little bit of a question. I mean, DeAndre Yedlin has yet to make that position his own. We don't really know what Klinsmann's going to do with him day in and day, from match to match. He has yet to get his feet wet at Tottenham. You have Timmy Chandler, who again did help in the attack in the sense of being a passing option. Leander, I don't think he made the right decisions when he pushed upfield, and then he got caught out for was it the goal or was it just an excellent chance on the part of Switzerland? I can't remember, but he certainly lost Shaqiri at one point. So these issues are going, and the center back thing is not yet settled. There are a lot of guys that Klinsmann's shuttling in and out of there.
Yeah, I mean, I think frankly Chandler was to blame on both of those big chances. I mean, the one that resulted in the goal and the one that didn't, because the first he was totally out to sea when Shaqiri sort of found all that space behind him, and on the second he actually stepped back and kept way behind his line and kept the goal scorer Stalker on line.
Right, that's the chance, yeah.
So he certainly didn't have a banner day. But what's interesting is I think kind of all the backs that Klinsmann likes to use between Yedlin and Chandler and Johnson and Shea are known at least or typically are better going forward than they are to actually defending, which is a problem when you're going to spend as much time defending as the U.S. is, and which is why I think he likes to use some of those guys in midfield as well. I think that's what has people encouraged about Garza, is that he's actually a good one-on-one defender, which is encouraging for a defender. But so you're seeing a lot of that, and like you say, there's so much turnover in the central defender spots. Now he's got Brooks next to Orozco that you worry about those guys just being able to develop chemistry. When Matt Beasler and Omar Gonzalez were getting a long run together last year before the World Cup and during qualifying, that really benefited them so much, and it kind of helped settle down the entire back line. And then, of course, Gonzalez got pulled during the World Cup a few times for Jeff Cameron, but you do need sort of that consistency and that continuity back there. And again, this is a rebuilding year, and this is the time to try things, but it's the amount of players being shuttled in and out is just so high that it's really becoming, I think, problematic.
Now they play the United States plays Mexico on a non-FIFA date in 14 days. Big friendly that's just mainly meant to make some money for both federations. And then you're pretty close to the Gold Cup. You got 2 friendlies in Europe to prepare for the Gold Cup, and we still don't know, have zero sense of what Klinsmann thinks his best 11 is.
Oh, no idea at all. And I really hope, I mean, for the fans' sake, that he uses those 2 games to actually build a team and the camp that's surrounding it. I mean, it's after the European club season, so I'm guessing he's going to have some extended time with his guys, especially since the Gold Cup is kind of late this year because of the Women's World Cup. So it would probably behoove him to really use that time to actually work on a starting 11 and on a consistent system and on chemistry. I mean, you have to wonder about these guys with so many new faces in every single camp where they probably need name tags, you do worry about that old American staple of being a unit and being a tight team and sort of knowing they can rely on each other going by the wayside a little bit.
Let's before I lose you, Leander, let's quickly turn to Europe and let's talk about your Dutch. They get a win over Spain in a friendly, but the situation with the Netherlands has not been great before that match. Some serious pressure when it comes to the performance. What's going on with the Dutch right now?
Well, it's hard, and as like the team that played Spain, they seem to be sort of a little bit between generations now. I mean, Robin van Persie, Wesley Sneijder, and Arjen Robben certainly aren't past it, but they've been carrying this team for a long time. Yesterday they were without Robin, and they beat Spain anyway. But you've got a new generation coming through now, guys like Memphis Depay and Jorginho Wijnaldum, and just quite a good amount of talent. But that doesn't seem to be quite ready yet. And so after the World Cup, after Louis van Gaal left, Guus Hiddink took over again. He was in charge in 1998 when they reached the semifinals. And Hiddink famously is sort of a man manager. I mean, he's a guy that's really good, and you saw it with South Korea, and particularly at the 2002 World Cup, at sort of creating a team and creating an atmosphere where guys trust each other and like each other, and they can sort of be more than the sum of their parts. And that's the Dutch team certainly has bickered a lot in the past, but this is a team with a lot of issues. The defense isn't very good. The Dutch defense has never really been very good, except for a period in the mid to late 90s, which is why Louis van Gaal had actually gone to a five-man backline. The first thing Hiddink did was sort of dump that, and immediately the problems emerged. They started off European qualifying with 2 losses out of 3 to the Czech Republic at home. Czech Republic away, Iceland away, and they beat Kazakhstan at home 3-1, but that was kind of labored. And then they lost to Mexico in a friendly, and the other day they barely scraped out a 1-1 tie against Turkey. They did manage to beat Spain, and they were sort of really efficient with their chances in the first half, but they pretty much got outplayed in the second half. So for me, that wasn't at all a resounding win, because you expect the Dutch to hold the ball and to control the play. So things are really in turmoil in the Dutch camp right now.
Well, yeah, but turmoil in the Dutch camp is something that most teams around the world would love to have, because regardless of the turmoil, they're still managing to qualify for everything and compete for everything. And yeah, they might have a bad tournament here or there, but there's enough talent in the Dutch side and coming through the system that you can always imagine them as a semifinalist no matter what they're playing in.
They are, but I mean, we're at a point now where the Dutch are also kind of thinking, we've got all these great players coming through, and we do get far in all these tournaments, but we still haven't won a World Cup. We've won 1 Euro. So there's a little bit of a sense of, always the bridesmaid syndrome. And I think that this time around, there's just not a whole lot of confidence in Guus Hiddink that he can get this team going. I mean, yes, they beat Spain, but did they sort of dominate them? Did they outplay them? No. Were they sort of really overmatched in the second half? Yeah, probably. They were just better with their chances, because Spain doesn't really have a striker right now, or not one that played anyway. Yeah. So there's the confidence there, and I mean, obviously you're talking about a pretty high barrier for what and a pretty high standard for what the Dutch have set, but there's just not the confidence that they're going to win anything anytime soon.
Last question, very quickly. Is Guus Hiddink in charge of this team when they go, if they go, and they're in third place right now in their group, if they go to the finals next year in France?
Honestly, I would call it 50-50. It kind of depends on how the resumption of their qualifiers go. And with the Dutch, I mean, the aesthetics are so important that even if they're winning games, that you wouldn't put it past them to fire a manager just because it doesn't look the way it's supposed to look. I mean, after Van Gaal left, actually long before he left, when he announced he would leave, they put in place sort of the 6 or 8 year plan where Guus Hiddink was going to take over for 2 years. That was going to be his last job. And then for after Euro 2016, he was going to hand it off to Danny Blind. And he was going to be the manager sort of long term. So it always struck me as a little bit speculative and almost arrogant to think that you can, set yourself up with your managers and sort of pre-appoint your managers, 8 years down the line, struck me as crazy, and it has backfired a little bit.
Leander Schaerlaeckens, you can follow him on Twitter, Leander Alphabet. He's writing in many places these days. Leander, appreciate your time and your insight. Thanks a lot. Hopefully we'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. My pleasure.
There goes Leander Schaerlaeckens, who has been busy today. We'll come back. We'll talk to Manuel Veth about some hooligan issues in Eastern Europe and other topics surrounding that part of the world. Soccer Morning, brought to you by World Soccer Talk. Don't go anywhere. Be right back.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on World Soccer Talk with Jason Davis.
We turn now to Eastern European topics with Manuel Veth from footballgrad.com. Excellent website covering that part of the world. I'm looking right now at the front page. We've got stories on Ukraine, Russia, Atletico Madrid. Obviously, that's not Eastern Europe, but there's a connection there. Trust me, a lot of things happening. Manuel, how are you, sir?
I'm all right. How about you, Jason?
I am good. Now, the most recent thing I've read by you at footballgrad.com addresses the issues that popped up in the Montenegro Russia game. This is troubling because, look, crowd trouble is always troubling, Manuel. But in this particular case, again, we go back to some of the things that have happened in the recent past when it comes to nationalism. And I think that's the buzzword that scares everyone. Is that what we're looking at here as well?
Yeah, that's absolutely what we're looking at here. To give you an example, it's very similar to the incident that happened between the Serbia-Albania game a few months ago, where a drone carried a flag depicting a larger Albania into the stadium, and which also caused the game to be interrupted and then eventually abandoned. And this is a similar issue here with Russian fans joining together with Serbian fans, declaring greater Slavic brotherhood, etc., and then Montenegro fans, of course, responding to it. And I mean, that part of the world the Balkans is so volatile when it comes to nationalism to begin with. So any kind of little spark can always set it off.
And again, I mean, I referenced this before we came on the air. Platini, who just was reelected UEFA president for the third time, running unopposed, made some comments in his address after winning about the rise of some of these issues. Is there something, how is UEFA tackling it now? How do you think they're doing in that regard? Is there something else that can be done? And look, the combination of football and politics and national pride, you're never going to be able to separate those things. It's impossible. So what's the best approach to attempt to keep these things from, again, sort of infiltrating the stadium?
That's a very good question. I think in general, UEFA has always said you can't mix football and politics. And as you said, that's just never going to happen. I mean, the reality is so different. Politics and football are so intertwined. How are you going to address these issues, though? I think we are now at the point where UEFA has to be just handing out very harsh punishments, because it has tried anything really, as in closing parts of the stadium, playing in front of empty stands, etc. I think that punishments have to be harsher, and at the same time, UEFA has to introduce measures that force football association, National Football Association, to educate football fans. I think that it has to be a two-step approach. On the one hand, harsh penalties, maybe even if it means disqualifying one of these countries. Yes, that might be an approach. And at the same time, but also making sure that football fans educated and not acting in this manner.
You say that, and of course, I mean, it would be very cynical of me to say that that's not going to work, and I want it to. And of course, you have to be proactive. You can't just take a hands-off approach. Yeah. But the other part of me, when it comes to being cynical, is whether UEFA would ever actually take those steps. And we've seen the disconnect every time that there's an incident of racism, of fan violence, of sectarian chanting, all of these things that pop up that UEFA has to deal with. They issue a fine, and it's always underwhelming. And then we get the comparison. I think someone in Scotland, I apologize, or no, someone in Scandinavia was fined recently for their field not being up to par. And the fine was similar to a fine for racist behavior in the stands. Mm-hmm. That's the wrong message, Manuel.
It is absolutely the wrong message, and I think that's why the punishments have to be a lot harsher for things that they happened in the Montenegro-Russia game. I think one of the big issues is, and I addressed this in the article, is UEFA's almost this brotherhood of former players, isn't it? You have someone like Dejan Savicevic phone Platini during the game saying, hey, we cannot interrupt this game. This has to keep going. And Dennis Aytekin, the referee, he wanted to stop the match the moment the flare hit Akinfeev. But then the phone call comes, right, and the game keeps going. So I think that is actually one of the big issues, is that the fact that people within UEFA have a sort of work together and make sure that really the harsh punishments are not being handed out.
The elements in this particular dynamic with the Russians and the Montenegrins, and as you said, the volatility of the Balkans, and obviously, as you said, the Slavic element with Russia, and yet Russia, as you point out in your piece, Russia really can't toss a lot of stones in this situation. They've had issues at home, and that's not necessarily an issue of nationalism every single time. We're also talking about club loyalties coming to the forefront as a reason for violence on the behalf of these fans. And again, and Manuel, maybe it's not fair that we do this, but the microscope's going to be on whoever has the World Cup next, and that happens to be Russia. Yeah. And I think people want to be sure that there are steps being taken, because too often we hear from the authorities there who are downplaying these issues.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, Russia is a very good example for that. There was a recent report by FARE, the Football Against Racism organization, FAREE, that has reported a form of a black book on issues of racism in Russia in the build-up of the World Cup. And I'm actually going to have an article out tomorrow, because Russia has recently brought in a new office, an anti-racism office within the Russian football union that is supposed to deal with problems of racism in Russian football. This is, of course, under pressure from FIFA, but I'm not sure if this is actually going to do enough to really solve the problems there.
There's a lot of consternation over the Russian World Cup, and while I believe that ultimately it'll be fine because FIFA likes to sanitize everything that they touch, and they'll find some way to keep, for lack of a better word, the rabble out, Manuel. There is a wider question of whether or not the international community and international football community specifically is feeling good about what's happening there and feeling good about what FIFA is doing. I mean, clearly we haven't seen enough change at the top. They keep making noises about it, and yet here we are. Do you believe that there's any sense at all that someone somewhere could decide to boycott the tournament, or there could be a sponsor pullout that would affect FIFA and force them to respond?
I doubt it. Even if a sponsor pulls out, I mean, we had examples of sponsors pulling out. There is always 10 sponsors lined up that would happily take their place. It's too much money, Jason. The thing is, there's so much money that you can make as a FIFA sponsor. The fact that if you are a sponsor of a major tournament like the World Cup simply means, and the exclusive rights that come with it, right? Because there's only about 6-7 exclusive sponsors, means that there's so much money. And there's so many sponsors that would like to get in, that are willing to sort of deal with these issues or even gloss them over. So I think from the advertisement perspective or the sponsorship effect perspective, there's not much that will be done. On the football side, I think, you will always hear players saying, "Oh, we shouldn't be going. It's going to be dangerous. There's going to be racism towards black players, etc." In the end of the day, everyone is still going to go, just because that it was the same before Ukraine, for example. There was issues of racism there. In the end of the day, everyone still went because, even for individual players, playing in a World Cup means an increase of that player's value, sure. Means that they can possibly make more money on the next contract. So it really comes down to that, doesn't it? It's all about money. So I think there's going to be a lot of words thrown around, but in the end of the day, it's still going to go ahead.
And again, I mean, I don't know how fair it is to project these kind of things on Russia, but you have the Euros in Ukraine and Poland, and there may have been some issues there, and you certainly have black players for many European nations. But you also have, for the World Cup, you have a different dynamic when the Ivorian fans come into town, or the Nigerian fans come into town, or large groups of fans who happen to be black. Is that something that you see as a potential issue this far out? And is this the steps that Russia is going to be taking? Are they going to make sure that those fans are going to have a good time? Because that's what it's about.
Yeah, I mean, it now appears that they are taking steps towards making sure that those fans will have a good time. Am I entirely convinced that will be enough? To be honest, not really, because in Russia, and I mean, I've spent a lot of time in Russia myself, of course, the educated people, and there's lots of them, and they're the majority. They see the issues of racism the same way than you and I do. They're very much opposed to it. It's the fact that there is still strong racist elements, though, that sometimes worries me. And I think it will take more than just saying, okay, we're going to create this new office, this new anti-racism office, or just providing lip service. I think there has to be a real effort to even educate the general population on issues such as racism, and that's something that right now is still lacking a bit in Russia. The one little positive I see is the fact that FIFA has put pressure on them. I don't often say very many positive things about FIFA, but they have put a lot of pressure on them. They have been very adamant about it. And the Putin government has actually responded by promising to introduce education and a whole bunch of different measures to curb racism in Russian society in general. So maybe something positive will come out of it, but 3 years to change something that is so ingrained in a society is not a lot of time.
At the same time, 3 years has been that kind of the kind of time frame that has brought back the rise, and I'm bringing this back to some bigger issues, Manuel, the rise of nationalism in Europe. Some of these far-right groups, some of these anti-immigrant groups are gaining traction. I don't want you to give me your assessment of the political state of Europe right now and why these things are happening. But again, they trickle over to football. And I just don't know what to do. I don't know what football can do about it. I'm not a big fan of Michel Platini. I'm not a big fan of FIFA. I'm not a big fan of the way UEFA has handled some of these issues. But at the same time, again, how do you possibly address something that is much, much bigger than just the game?
Well, you do it through education. You punish people and you educate them. And I think a good example is Germany. I remember in the 90s, in the late 80s and 90s, racism in German stadiums was an issue. And nowadays it's pretty much non-existent. And the way they've done it, they have talked to the fans. And, of course, you still get the occasional fan saying something racist being racist in the stadium, making racist chants, but it's such a small occurrence now. And when it happens, everyone condemns it and puts that person on a negative pedestal, so to speak. And that has been done through education, through measurements by clubs, through measurements by the Football Association. So I think that is a way to approach it. And I think you can see similar things happen in England as well. Is it perfect yet? No, absolutely not. And I think there's still a long way to go. So I think in Europe in general, we are in the right direction. In Eastern Europe, there is still a long way to go.
Let me turn to something that's a little bit better, although Dynamo Kiev has certainly had their own issues with some fan problems, Manuel. But they did manage to overcome Everton in the Europa League. How important how good, how great, how uplifting would a trophy be for Kiev, for that team, and certainly that country?
I think it would be a great propaganda coup for the current Kiev administration. I mean, they have done a lot already to, sort of put themselves in a good light by Poroshenko, the president of Ukraine, the current president of Ukraine. He was photographed with surrounded by a whole bunch of injured soldiers celebrating the victory against Everton. So I think it would be a great coup. I think it would also be, personally, I think it would be also great for the country. Not sure how much it will actually change in terms of the dynamics that are going on in the country. I don't think it's not the same as it was, for example, the Wunder von Bern when Germany won the World Cup after in 1954 after World War II, because the country is still amidst this crisis. So it wouldn't not necessarily have that same uplifting kind of effect, but I think it would be great for probably very good for the current government, that's for sure.
Well, Dnipro is also in this tournament as well, and I apologize if I get my pronunciation really, really wrong here.
Yeah.
What's in terms of the profile of the two clubs? Can you compare them and contrast them, and if there are some political elements at play, maybe explain those as well?
Well, Dynamo Kiev is, that's the biggest, most popular club in Ukraine. It hasn't, of course, in recent years been sort of undermined by Shakhtar Donetsk, who probably now have the same standing. But back in the time of the Soviet Union, Dynamo Kiev was the all-Ukrainian football club. It was the biggest football institution in Ukraine during the time of the Soviet Union, and of course for the first 10 years of independence as well. And I think the club is a sleeping giant. They have in recent years understood that they have to do something about creative marketing, etc. So I think they would really catalyze a lot of support by winning the cup. Dnipro is more of a regional phenomenon. And they are struggling a bit too because they're not allowed to play UEFA games in Dnipropetrovsk. They have to play them all in Kiev. So I think for them it would not have the same effect winning the title as it would have for Dynamo. So yeah, there's huge differences. Also, Dnipro hasn't won a single title since or major title since the fall of the Soviet Union.
Interesting. You have Club Bruges against I'm going to say Dnipro. I'm sorry, I apologize for that. And then Dynamo Kiev against Fiorentina. Just from your footballing perspective, who's got a better chance of breaking through into the semis?
Well, you said Dnipro had a Bruges, right?
Yes.
Yes, that is the more likely candidate.
Yeah,
absolutely. But I think even the Fiorentina Dynamo Kiev game is a 50-50, especially because Kiev is such a difficult place to play. Everton experienced that, and I remember a few years ago, Borussia Mönchengladbach, they came into Kiev and they lost 3-0 and won their home game 2-0. It's a very difficult place to play, especially for international football.
Should be fascinating to watch two Ukrainian teams in the quarterfinals of the Europa League. Manuel Veth, make sure you're checking out that website, footballgrad.com. It's FUTBOLGRAD.com. Manuel, fascinating stuff. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for having me on the show once again. Always
go.
Fascinating talking to you, man.
All right, appreciate that. And let's take a break. When we come back, phone lines will be open 347-756-6276. You can get us on Twitter at Soccer Morning. We'll take your phone calls and your comments. Don't go anywhere. Be right back.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on World Soccer Talk with Jason Davis.
Here we go, back on Soccer Morning. Phone lines open 347-756-6276. We got a call from 504 on the line. Who's this?
This is Zach Six and Jason. What's going on?
What's going on, Zach?
Not too much. I'm hanging out. I hear you guys are talking USMNT and NYCFC.
We are doing that. Do you have comments on either one of those topics?
I do. I am a third rail member. I am an American outlaw, and I still cannot really enjoy MLS soccer or watching the U.S. men's national team play. It's just not enjoyable.
Why? Why? What? I don't understand. What do you mean?
Look. You put the American flag around my shoulders. I will cry in the stadium when Deuce takes the field. But Breck Shea knocking in a free kick from 25 yards. You realistically tell me that is going to happen consistently, or that the way the team's getting moved around, this stuff isn't exciting.
Okay.
I don't even know if we're making steps forward.
Okay. Well, I mean, I agree with that to a certain extent. We just talked about that. The steps forward are not obvious. The steps forward are, if there are any, are completely hidden from our public view. If Jurgen Klinsmann thinks he's making progress, I'd like him to tell us how he thinks they're making progress. And of course, you're not going to count on a Breck Shea free kick goal every time out. But they did create some chances. They were a little dangerous. Again, I'm sort of flabbergasted that we're talking about that game as a step forward when they had 37% of the ball. Now, look, possession stats get a little murky because how they're counted is not always clear. But
Sure.
When they have 37% based on whatever that is, passes completed, whatever it is, it's not good. That's troubling. That's not, I mean, we shouldn't be like, oh, yay, we made progress. We should be going, wait a second. We got back to the level we were, I don't know, 10 years ago. I mean, that's the thing. But even 10 years ago, more effective team, more cohesive team, a team that knew how to play together. And again, this is a function of Klinsmann turning over his lineup every single time out. Klinsmann just kind of grabbing into a big bag of players and saying, oh, this one, nah, throw that away. I'll pull out another one. No, okay, this is the guy I'm going to try this week. Meanwhile, again, there's no ability to create any sort of understanding between the 11 guys that are playing. It's just, it's insane. You got anything else?
No, that's pretty much it.
I appreciate it, man. Go hang out with the third rail. Washington's on the air. What's up, Washington?
Hey, what's up, Jason? I don't know because I had to take the earphones off in order to listen to the call on the phone. So I don't know if you addressed this already, but I need to hear you say it, man. I need to hear you say that the blasphemy that you said earlier about NYCFC sharing Red Bull Arena in New Jersey is April Fool's. I need to hear you say that before I can address what I wanted to address for. Please tell me.
Wait, can I plead the fifth, Washington? Can I plead the fifth? Let's see. How else do I address this? Based on everything I've been told by certain individuals, there's a chance that may be a thing that could possibly one day happen.
Yeah, whatever. Okay. I'm calling you BS on that. All right. I'm moving on.
You're no fun, Washington.
You got me banging my head against the wall. Anyway, all right. I'm going to pretend like it's April Fool's and moving on.
All right, later, Washington.
USMP, man.
Okay. You got some comments?
Listen, I'm really getting tired of Klinsmann. I am. I'm at the point. If they lose against Mexico on the 15th, I'm calling for his head.
Okay.
I don't care. It's a friendly. I don't care. That this is it's not for a qualifier or anything like that. If he pulls his crap with Mexico, I'm calling for his head because that's it. I'm done with him.
All right, that's fair enough, Washington. I mean, I think it'll be interesting to see what the fallout is. Thanks for the call, man. It'll be interesting to see what the fallout is if they don't play well and lose. If they play well and get beaten by a penalty, a shaky penalty, or a fluke goal, or maybe a set piece, it could be. There could be some debate. If they lose and they play badly, and that game again means nothing outside of maybe getting a lineup together, then there will be some questions. Jonathan Tannenwald's on the line. What's up?
Since your calls aren't being screened yet, I'm going to move for this to be the day when your producer Trevor finally puts his voice on there.
Oh, why today?
Take a guess.
No, I have one, but I'd like to hear you say it because I can't read your mind.
Yeah, well, it's a very particular day of the year, isn't it?
I've been told that it is a particular day of the year.
Okay.
Yes.
Well,
yes. It's traditionally the day when everybody says, log off the internet and don't even read anything at all. And maybe don't listen to this show either. Maybe that's the right advice, Jonathan. Maybe people shouldn't be listening to this show today because you never know. You just never know.
As I said, I think today is the day that Trevor should be heard on.
Well, because you are aware, you are probably more aware than anyone else that the thing I'm not going to address probably.
Well, you already addressed it once in the show.
No, I did, but probably originated from that individual, not from me particularly.
I can't imagine why.
I am party to everything here. I'm on the show. It's my show. I'm talking into the microphone. Therefore, I own everything I say. But yes, it is a particular day of the year.
Okay.
All right.
That's it.
All right, bye, Jonathan.
Bye.
There you go. 662. You're on the air.
Hey guys, how's it going?
It's going well. What's up?
Hey, nothing much. This might be just a tad off topic, but I just want to kind of get your thoughts on this. On what is the the potential value to American soccer and the quote casual soccer fan as a whole of having all these other teams all these international teams come over and play their friendlies within our borders. You know, we see Mexico do it all the time. They played in Kansas City last night. Argentina played in New York last night. El Salvador played in LA last night.
You know the answer to this question.
On if that could potentially be of any value to the growth of the game.
You know what the answer? You know why those games happen here. Those games happen here because they make money. That's it. End of story, period, whatever. Now, we can come to some convoluted conclusion about how Lionel Messi being in the United States and playing, he didn't play, but if he had, is a good thing for the growth of soccer, and that you've got, heroes here that the kids can look up to and one day aspire to be like. And when Mexico plays here, clearly that's driving some sort of, it's furthering the rivalry between the U.S. and Mexico. And I don't know, whoever. When clubs come, when big club teams come here, obviously it's about money, but hey, it's exposure for the game. And when the best players in the world are in this on American soil, that's when the mainstream media starts to pay attention, which therefore broadens the message of soccer. But come on, it's about money.
Yeah. There's no question that it's about money, but to me, it's not going to hurt the game. So I go back and forth on whether I have an issue with Mexico playing their games here, just because there's the rivalry between the two. But I don't think it's going to hurt the game. It could only potentially be a good thing. Now, yes, obviously it's 100%.
No, I don't think it's a net loss in terms of capital for the game, emotional capital, cultural capital for the game. I don't think it's a net loss, but I think that in certain games, in certain times, in certain stadiums, with certain teams, can sometimes not be the greatest thing for American soccer, a big picture. But I don't know that we should be worried about that, because there is a lot of momentum. It's not like you're slowing this thing down right now. So as far as I can tell, let them come over. If it's a matter of breaking into a season schedule and causing problems, if guys get hurt playing in meaningless games, if Mexico comes here and plays in games that are distracting from some other product, American soccer product, okay, maybe that's not great. But again, as you said, it probably on the whole, it's probably a good thing. Anything else, man?
No, that's it. Thanks for your time.
Appreciate that. There you go. 347-756-6276 is your phone number. We'll take your calls on the U.S. men's national team performance against Switzerland yesterday. Again, it's a very odd phenomenon. It's a very odd thing to see when they have been playing poorly enough that we were legitimately worried about whether or not they're going to get it together in time for the Gold Cup. And they put together a fairly good performance, a solid reactive performance. That's the way I'm going to phrase this. A solid reactive performance. And suddenly that's not celebration. Nobody's screaming from the rooftops. Nobody necessarily thinks that they are an odds-on favorite for the Gold Cup now, but there's a lot of positivity floating around. And it's interesting that that's all it takes. And again, you still have an unclear lineup situation. You still relied on a set-piece goal. You still gave up your lead. Josie Altidore is not helping the situation and our analysis by having picked up that red card. It makes it a much more difficult thing to look at that game and take it in its totality and say, it might mean this, it might mean that. And as Leander pointed out, friendlies are that if it goes well, yay, we won that game against Italy or whoever. But if it goes poorly, it was just a friendly. And I think there is a middle ground there. I think you take out some of the big picture items. I think you take out the cohesive elements that may or may not be apparent. And I think you take out momentum, because I think that matters. Guillermo's on the line. What's up, Guillermo?
Hey, good morning, everybody. Well, yesterday was a great day for soccer, man. Caught the U.S. game, caught the Mexican game, and it feels like they're both teams started hitting the same way, right? They're barely stumbling by. Mexico got a win. The U.S. should have won. I felt that they had the run of play. The U.S. did really good. I mean, they went to Switzerland in the height, playing one of the top or middle of the table European teams. We're there. That's where our level is. The back end doesn't worry me. I think it'll tighten up. I think we get the Gold Cup and we go Confederations. If you don't do that, then Cleansy got to go.
Okay, is that your opinion? I mean, that's a high bar.
No, I think that's it. I think he's already got half of the door into Confederations. If he doesn't get us in, he has two ways to get in. Right. If you can't do that, then we need to go in a different direction before the World Cup starts creeping in.
So do you think it? So you you would say it's okay to finish, say, third or fourth in the Gold Cup, but as long as you win that playoff for the Confederations Cup spot, he's still okay?
We got to be there. We got to be able to put in the games before the World Cup, do that whole tour before, and have some meaningful games for the team to move forward. If we can't even get in, then he's the wrong guy.
Okay. Fair enough, Guillermo. Appreciate the phone call, man.
Hey, take it easy, man.
Yeah, Giovanni's on the line. What's up, Giovanni?
Hey, man. Long time no talk, man. How you doing?
I'm good. What's up? What's on your mind today?
I want to talk a little about the game yesterday, and I guess I want to talk a little bit about the Gold Cup.
All right.
And our opponents. Man.
Okay.
I guess yesterday the USA party. What I was reading on Bleacher Report, man, they were saying that it was one of the best games in the Jurgen Klinsmann played, and I kind of have to disagree.
Okay.
On that.
Okay. Well, I mean, I think again, what kind of pool are we're grabbing from here? I mean, it's not like there's a lot of Jurgen Klinsmann games where you sort of look at the whole game and go, that was pretty good. A lot of Jurgen Klinsmann games are extremely in the World Cup. Despite the fact that they got some results, they beat Ghana. You know, you draw with Portugal. You give up a late goal. That's what I'm saying. Like at the end, it's always, oh, whoops, we gave up a late goal. Whoops, we didn't hold our lead. The tactics are questionable. You have, I don't know, how many games are there on Jurgen Klinsmann's resume that you can pick out and say that was a good performance by the Americans?
I just honestly, I believe that we're struggling because the thing is that Klinsmann is not a tactician. Well, I think we can all agree that he's not a tactician. And I think I have to start believing what Philip Lahm had to say in his book, which was saying that he was basically letting players go do whatever they want. And at times they look lost. For instance, Jesse's artist, man, I don't think he knew what he was doing. Like, he did some good combination play, but other than that, he looked like a little lost kid running around some grown-up adults or something, man, because I was shocked on the way he was playing. And then Altidore just looked frustrated, and then he couldn't control the game. Part of Klinsmann's job is to have Altidore calm down.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if he can do that from the sideline. Certainly, Josie's issue was he felt like the Swiss were kicking him. He wasn't getting the calls that he wanted. He got frustrated, and obviously it boiled over with the red card. But he was again, Josie Altidore is such a difficult player to assess in the international game, in the U.S. setup, because he scores the occasional goal, which he didn't do in England, we know. He's doing that in Toronto when he's playing with them. But he does work that's necessary for the way that the United States plays, and I just don't see how you can replace him directly. This was the issue at the World Cup, how you replace him directly. So it's almost like you have to put up with whatever Josie gives you, whether it's good or bad, because he is strong enough and he is big enough to play as a target, even if his touch is off, even if he's not winning enough headers. He's still the only guy you got that can do that job.
Now, let me ask you something. During the game, do you think Josie, because he wasn't getting, obviously he wasn't getting that great of service. I mean, he got some service, but not great. Do you think is it because he doesn't have the quality to take on better defenders? Because these defenders were better than, Switzerland's known for the defensive, play. And do you think he got frustrated because he can't play against the better defenders other than the last game where, those defenders weren't the greatest? But what do you think on that?
No, I don't know if that's the case. I mean, I've seen Josie Altidore beat some pretty good defenders, and I'm seeing him bottled up by some pretty average defenders. I think it's just a matter of how good he is on that particular day.
Okay, and one more thing, Jason, about the Gold Cup, man. I was listening to the previous caller, and he was saying that he'd be happy with the third place finish in the Gold Cup.
What he was saying is you got to get into the Confederations Cup, and he's not. I guess his point was that should be the target, making the Confederations Cup rather than winning the Gold Cup.
Yeah. Well, I just got to say, man, I think we're really going to struggle with this Gold Cup. I mean, you look at Costa Rica and how they've been playing, minus the loss against Panama the other day. And then you look at Mexico with Herrera having Mexico actually playing really well, and having these youngsters. When he brings in his youngsters, they actually play. He integrates them, and they play well. When in comparison to the United States, when Jurgen Klinsmann brings them, they don't. I'm not going to say they don't play well, but they play either average or below average. So what I'm trying to say is, I think we're going to actually struggle, or if we're lucky, make it to the final against either Costa Rica Mexico or Honduras. Because Honduras, even though they play also against Guyana, they're with the coach they have now, was Costa Rica's old coach.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're going to have a good tournament. So I don't know. I'm
not sold on Honduras at this point. We'll see. I mean, Panama, I think, could make some noise, and obviously we know what Costa Rica and Mexico bring. And this is the difficulty. I mean, I'm certainly because I'm so focused on the U.S. and their preparation. I look at that game against Switzerland and I say, okay, well, this isn't good enough, and they're not doing this well, but maybe they're showing some progress in this area. Then last night I watched Mexico and Paraguay, and Mexico wins on a very early goal, but they didn't do much for the rest of that game. And I guess if I was a Mexico fan, I'd find reason to pick that apart as well. But that doesn't mean Mexico's not a favorite, and it shouldn't mean that the United States isn't still a major threat to win. So it's very difficult at this point in the process, coming out of a World Cup year, heading into a Gold Cup that matters, to figure out where these teams are.
Okay. Do you think that, under your circumstances, when do you think we get rid of Klinsmann? If we do.
Honestly, I don't think Klinsmann ever gets fired. I think his contract goes all the way to the end. That's just I don't see it. I don't see the Federation doing anything but that. I just can't. They would have to finish.
Is it because it's Pilates' baby right there?
I mean, they're paying the man a lot of money. They re-upped him before the World Cup. I think Galati has put all in and believes in the process that Klinsmann is taking the U.S. through. And again, that's what they're selling us. Whether or not you believe they're doing it this way, what they've sold us is that this is a process and that this is a revolution or an evolution of the program, that it isn't just about winning games right now, that it's about reforming the American attitude. I don't think they're doing a very good job of that, but I do think they're pushed all of their chips into the middle on that. So I don't think he's getting fired, Giovanni. I think he's running his contract out.
Okay.
Appreciate the call, man. There you go. 347, you're on the air.
Hey, Jason. How's it going?
It's going well. Who's this?
Caesar from New York.
What's going on, Caesar?
Pretty much I want to comment, first of all, nice try, Trevor, on that little April Fool's tweet that he sent out.
What are you talking about? I have no idea what you're talking about, Caesar. Come on, man. You throwing mud at the program? You trying to claim that? Never mind. Go ahead.
All right. And just my second comment on the U.S. preparations for the Gold Cup. I mean, pretty much when you see Mexico send out a B team yesterday and beat pretty much Paraguay's starting lineup, it kind of worries me that, we might not have the depth to go through the whole Gold Cup and actually put out a good starting 11. I don't even know who would.
Yeah, I don't know who that is. I mean, we just talked about that. I have no idea who their starting 11 is. And here's the thing about Mexico. And consider the roster they had last night against Paraguay. Consider who was on the field. Jonathan Dos Santos is going to be part of their team. I don't know which one yet, because that's the thing. Miguel Herrera has to decide who is my best team, because that's the team he's going to take to the Gold Cup to try to win that tournament so he can get into the Confederations Cup or the playoff for the Confederations Cup. And then who is his second best team, his 1A team that he can take down to the Copa America, because he's got to deal with both of those situations, and they are prioritizing their regional tournament.
And then one more thing. What are your thoughts on Fredo Morales on the national team?
I'm sort of, I run hot and cold on him. I'm not sure. I mean, I think he's a relatively talented player. I saw him lose the ball a couple of times for just not being quick enough with his decision making yesterday, and that bothers me. And I don't think you can be doing that in midfield with the issues that the United States has on the back line. So that would be my major concern with Morales. I mean, he's just a worker. You know what I mean? He's just a guy who's going to give you a lot of effort, and maybe he'll have some recoveries, and maybe he'll make a couple of decent passes, maybe a switch or two here or there, but he's not going to be the guy who makes things go. So I don't know. I feel like you could have somebody a little bit more dynamic in that position.
All right.
Anything else, man?
No, nothing else.
All right, there you go. Caesar calling from New York. I don't know what he's talking about. So making stuff. Is this like the April Fool's joke on us, Trevor? People calling us up and saying that we're making stuff up? Is that how this works? We're being ganged up on. People have no idea what you're talking about. No. All right, let's go ahead and wrap up this edition of Soccer Morning on a Wednesday. Thank you very much for checking us out. As always, go to backheel.com/store. Get yourself a mug. Go to 30fc.com to buy a T-shirt, get onto iTunes. Give us a rating and a review. That works out. Thank you very much to Leander Schaerlaeckens and Manuel Veth for their appearances on the program today. Good stuff from both of them. Tomorrow's Thursday, April 2nd, 2015 is tomorrow. That's a notable date because it's not April 1st. Whatever, we got to go. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Bye.